Nuo Xi. Through its 3,000 years of history, Nuo Opera has played an indispensable role in building the Chinese identity and has also been an integral part of life for people in ancient China. And the fact that I want to talk about Nuo Opera today is because there is something inherently different about Nuo Opera from other forms of traditional theater near its time. It could be traced to a term, catharsis, which is coined by the Greek philosopher Aristotle. What it means is that it basically describes this convention where directors and playwrights have to first depict tragic storylines and events in their plays so that their audience may purge ideas of pity and fear from their minds and hearts. And this is where Nuo Opera becomes different. You see, the very essence of Nuo Opera revolves around the belief and reliance that Nuo Opera in itself is the prevention of tragic and sad storylines and events from happening in the first place. In other words, Nuo Opera is a medium of hope for the people in China. And more specifically, I'll be talking about a form of Nuo Opera located in Jiangxi, China, and more specifically in Zhong Village. This kind of Nuo Opera is considered as one of Jiangxi's provincial intangible cultural heritage. And by retaining many of the original characteristics of Nuo Opera, this particular branch features a combination between dramatic performances and rituals. The performers there wear simple red cloaks and black cloth that cover their entire heads. And the props they use are also very simplistic in that most of the decorations are made out of wood in a very minimal style. Because, quite frankly, the emphasis of Nuo Opera in Jiangxi and all around China is on its mask. 所谓戴上面具即为神，就比如说，我现在戴上这个面具，我可以是神，我可以是鬼，我也可以是英雄，我也可以是恶人。So essentially, they are vessels of transformation. They represent different identities. They represent different gods, different deities. And it is believed that by putting on these masks, the performers would be able to directly become these gods and these deities, and would therefore be able to engage in deep and meaningful conversations with the other gods and deities, so that they can wish for things like the disappearances of illnesses, diseases, the coming of prosperity, and the fertility of crops. And they would do so every single year by first inviting the village entries to invoke patron gods by carrying them in processions to each village, accompanied by other deities carried in baskets. And at each stop, they would place the gods and deities onto a central hallway or courtyard so that they would be available for offerings from the villagers, while the Nuo performers chant rituals and enact invocations nearby. And throughout its course of history, Nuo Opera in Zhong Village has developed a very rich repertoire consisting of 108 different distinct masks, supported by 108 different distinct characters. But due to trends like urbanization, the tradition in Zhong Village is rapidly fading. Only 7 of the plays remain, mostly consisting of solo or duet performances, which are on a very small scale. The number of masks has also dwindled down to 34 remaining pieces out of the original 108. And the troupe of Nuo performers only consists of 40 elderly members who struggles from low earnings and oral transmissions as the only means of passing down this knowledge of Nuo Opera, which renders the risk of cultural loss and misinterpretation very, very high. You see, the essence of Nuo Opera revolves around the belief and reliance that it in itself is a medium of communication with the gods. And the fact that it was such an integral part of life for people back in ancient times is because people lacked thorough understanding in nature, in medicine, and in the human body itself. Of course, this doesn't mean that any belief is wrong. It just happens so that science, a more structured belief, a more comprehensive belief, if you will, a byproduct of the recent centuries, came along and squeezed out any remaining spaces for other beliefs, such as Nuo Opera. And it is from this very shift in dominance that resulted in the gradual disappearance of this culture. So facing this inevitable trend, the performers of Nuo Opera are also trying to inject elements of Nuo Opera into lifestyles for people living in urbanized areas. For example, many of the inheritors are utilizing their skills involved in Nuo Opera, such as their carving skills, to carve figures and masks onto daily utensils used by people in urbanized areas, such as pencil cases. And also, many of the performers are leveraging the advancement of internet technologies to record rituals that were previously unseen. But most importantly, many of the performers are injecting elements of Nuo Opera into modern dance forms that features better-looking makeups and fancier costumes, which could attract and appeal to the younger generation. So, in essence, the Nuo Opera, this whole culture, and the performers inside it faces a very difficult trade-off and a very difficult dilemma. They could either choose to change the way with which Nuo Opera presents itself to a wider audience, but would risk losing its original meaning and purpose, or they could choose to let it remain the same as it has always been for the past 3,000 years, but would slowly drown in the river of history. And these are all very difficult choices for the performers, and while they may become gods, and fearless gods even, while wearing the mask and during performances, there are still normal human beings living from paycheck to paycheck without it. So in the end, maybe the essence of Nuo Opera may no longer lie in the reliance on belief and the preservation of its original meaning and purpose, but rather the fact that people today may still dance the opera, and that people today may still enjoy the opera, regardless of its shape or form. And lastly, I would like to end with a really cliche phrase. If there's anything I'd like you guys to take away from and remember, it's this: 人有难，方有挪，挪无起，百病消。谢谢大家。